Imagine handing someone millions of dollars and watching them immediately buy a pet tiger, a replica Stonehenge, and, because why not, a gold-plated toilet. It's like giving financial freedom to a toddler with a credit card. These aren't just bad purchases. They're Olympic-level dives into the deep end of stupidity, where common sense drowns instantly. And believe me, if you think that sounds insane, you haven't even glimpsed the truly legendary ways people have managed to turn jackpot dreams into debt nightmares. 1. The very first thing some winners do when handed a giant check for millions of dollars is buy a mansion bigger than a mall. Not just a house, mind you, but an estate with more bathrooms than they have friends. Because nothing says responsible financial planning like purchasing 17 toilets for your two-bedroom brain. And the best part? Most of them can't even keep the lights on after a year because, shocker, cleaning and heating a palace costs actual money. Who knew utility bills didn't just vanish into the millionaire ether? These folks basically audition for Hoarder's Architectural Edition and then wonder why they're broke. 2. One winner in Florida, clearly inspired by Fast and Furious, blew through millions by buying cars he didn't even know how to drive. Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bentleys. Basically, if it had wheels and made noise, he swiped his shiny new card. Did he invest in driving lessons? Number. He crashed them like they were disposable Hot Wheels. Imagine explaining to your insurance agent that yes, this is the third car totaled this month, and no, you still don't know how to parallel park. His garage was worth more than small countries, but his actual skill set was hit tree, repeat. 3. Then there's the guy who took buying friends way too literally. He decided the best use of millions was to throw parties so excessive, even Gatsby would have said, "Dude, chill." We're talking fountains of champagne, live tigers as decor, and strippers arriving in limousines. It worked for about 3 months. Then, surprise, when the money dried up, so did the guest list. Turns out, friends who only show up for free Dom Perignon and Jungle Cats don't stick around when you're back to boxed wine. Who knew loyalty couldn't be rented by the hour? 4. Some winners think small. Like the guy who blew a fortune on scratch-off tickets, convinced lightning could strike twice. Yes, he used lottery winnings to buy more lottery tickets. This is like using your cancer remission party to chain-smoke cigars. Unsurprisingly, he lost everything. At least he proved one universal truth. If the house always wins, the lottery company is the damn landlord. 5. A woman in the UK won big and decided her true dream was to spend every penny making her backyard into a miniature theme park. We're talking rides, concession stands, even a roller coaster that could maybe hold 2 terrified children. She basically turned her house into a Chuck E. Cheese for no one. The rides broke constantly, the neighbors hated her, and her fortune disappeared faster than cotton candy in the rain. On the bright side, at least she learned the difference between investment and money piñata. 6. Some geniuses go the opposite route and try to become philanthropists, except their version of charity is giving cash to anyone who asks. Cousins, neighbors, the guy at the gas station who swears he has a business plan. One man in West Virginia literally handed out envelopes of cash to strangers. He called it spreading joy. His accountant called it bankruptcy with extra steps. Apparently, his financial plan was just playing Oprah until broke. You get money. You get money. Oh wait, I don't get money. 7. One winner in Canada had a vision. Open a chain of high-end restaurants. The catch? He had no idea how restaurants worked. He thought it was just serve food, collect money. Instead, he learned it's more like burn money, cry in walk-in freezer. Every location failed spectacularly because his brilliant idea of a signature dish was microwaved lasagna. Nothing screams fine dining like reheated stoufers for $45 a plate. He went bankrupt faster than you can say, "Would you like fries with that?" 8. Then there was the guy who wanted to live like royalty, so he literally bought himself a crown. Yes, a custom gold crown studded with diamonds, which he wore everywhere. Walmart, the DMV, his kid's soccer game. It was less King Arthur and more Pawn Stars rejected prop. Within a year, the crown was repossessed, because apparently jewel-encrusted headgear is not a valid form of mortgage payment. The only thing he ruled was the kingdom of poor decisions. 9. A British couple won millions and decided the best way to secure their future was to buy a soccer team. Now, this sounds glamorous until you realize they bought a failing team in the lowest division. Basically, a group of part-time mechanics kicking balls in mud. They poured in millions, hoping for Premier League glory. Instead, they got rain-soaked losses, angry fans, and players quitting because the free sandwiches ran out. Owning a failing sports team is basically the financial version of setting cash on fire, but with more drunk yelling. 10. One man in the US thought he'd make his money work for him by investing in exotic pets. Tigers, lions, monkeys, you name it. His backyard turned into a Walmart version of Tiger King. Feeding the animals alone cost thousands a week, which he hadn't factored in because apparently he thought tigers ran on hopes and dreams. Eventually, authorities confiscated the animals, and his millions vanished with them. Congratulations, sir. You've discovered the least profitable zoo since Noah's Ark. 11. A woman won the jackpot and immediately dumped her husband, because why split the money? But karma has a sense of humor. She later spent nearly all of her winnings fighting lawsuits from her own family members, who argued she didn't share fairly. The irony? She could have kept more money by just splitting it with her husband in the first place. Instead, she went broke, buying lawyers instead of shoes. And nothing screams success like ending your millionaire run back in a one-bedroom apartment with a cat named Alimony. 12. Then there's the guy who thought financial security meant building a bunker for the apocalypse. He spent millions constructing an underground fortress with food supplies, weapons, and even a bowling alley. Problem was, he lived in Kansas. No apocalypse ever came, but the property taxes sure did. He eventually had to sell his doomsday palace for pennies, proving that sometimes the end of the world is just you, alone, in debt, eating expired canned beans in the dark. 13. One lottery champ decided to fund his dream of becoming a country music star. He bought all the gear, guitars, recording studio time, even paid for radio play. The problem? He couldn't sing at all. We're talking drunk karaoke at Applebee's level. His album sales totaled about 17 copies, probably all bought by his mom. Millions down the drain, and the only legacy he left was a box of CDs clogging up garage sales. Who knew you can't buy talent at Guitar Center? 14. A man in Georgia won big and thought, you know what's smart? Investing in ostrich racing. Yes, he believed strapping tiny jockeys to birds was the next NFL. He bought dozens of ostriches, trained them, built tracks, and then realized nobody, literally nobody, wanted to bet on angry 6-foot birds. His dream collapsed after the first race ended with half the riders in the ER. Turns out, ostrich racing isn't a business model. It's just a YouTube fail video waiting to happen. 15. Another genius decided to buy an island. Romantic, right? Except he didn't check for, infrastructure. No power, no clean water, no actual buildings, just sand and mosquitoes. He dumped millions trying to develop paradise, but it quickly turned into Gilligan's Island minus the laugh track. Eventually, he abandoned it because it was uninhabitable, meaning he basically paid millions for the world's most expensive pile of dirt. Congratulations, you bought a beach towel you can't even sit on. 16. Some winners go the subtle route, like the guy who decided to live simply by blowing his millions on Beanie Babies. Yes, plush toys shaped like sad little animals. He filled entire storage units with them, convinced they'd appreciate in value. Spoiler, they did not. By the time he realized it, his net worth was basically equal to a flea market. You can't eat stuffed hippos, and they don't pay rent. He turned millions of dollars into a mountain of polyester regret. 17. And finally, one of my favorites, the man who won millions and then immediately announced he was quitting his job to live off interest. Great idea, except he didn't invest the money. He literally just left it sitting in a checking account and went shopping. Within 5 years, he had no job, no money, and a very nice collection of jet skis he couldn't afford gas for. He learned the hard way that living off interest only works if you know the difference between a savings account and a Toys R Us catalog. 18. One man in the US decided the best way to manage his newfound millions was to start a Christian theme park, complete with animatronic disciples, a fake Red Sea you could part with a button, and, of course, $20 souvenir crosses. He genuinely thought this would rival Disney. Instead, it looked like a yard sale collided with Sunday school. The animatronic Jesus broke down constantly, so visitors were greeted by a robot savior twitching like he needed an exorcism. Within a year, attendance tanked, and his miracle park went bankrupt. Because apparently, even in America, not everything can be monetized into a biblical roller coaster. 19. A Scottish winter thought the best way to secure his fortune was to marry fast, really fast. He blew cash on a whirlwind romance with a woman he'd known for less time than it takes Amazon to deliver a toaster. The wedding was lavish, the ring enormous, and the divorce lawyer's bill even bigger. Within a year, half his winnings were gone, and the only thing he had to show for it was an empty wallet and a legally binding reminder that love is expensive, but stupidity is catastrophic. Honestly, Vegas would have been cheaper, and at least the Elvis impersonator throws in free karaoke. 20. Then we have the guy who thought winning millions meant he was destined for Hollywood. He financed his own movie, starring himself, of course. Imagine a 2-hour epic where the plot is basically guy wins lottery and becomes a hero, directed by someone whose only previous film experience was watching Die Hard on VHS. Shockingly, nobody wanted to see it. Theaters refused to play it, DVDs collected dust, and his millions disappeared in post-production. Turns out, there's a reason Scorsese doesn't cast lottery winners as leading men. It's because watching a rich guy pretend to be James Bond is less entertaining than watching paint dry. 21. A man in Ireland decided to build a giant mansion shaped like a replica of the White House. Yes, he spent millions making his personal home look like Washington, D.C.'s most famous address. The only difference? His had worse plumbing and a driveway full of abandoned sports cars. Neighbors called it an eyesore, local papers mocked him, and the upkeep nearly bankrupted him. Because apparently, nothing says wise investment like recreating a global symbol of political dysfunction and then realizing you can't even afford the gardener. He didn't build the American dream. He built a parody sketch that cost millions. 22. One British winner thought money would finally make him popular. His strategy? Bribery disguised as gifts. He bought motorbikes for co-workers, gave cash to neighbors, even handed out designer handbags like Oprah on a sugar rush. For about 6 months, he was the most loved man in town. Then, when the cash dried up, so did the friendship. Suddenly, nobody returned his calls, and the handbags ended up on eBay. Turns out, money doesn't buy loyalty. It just rents it, at a very inflated rate. And once the lease ends, you're left broke, friendless, and with the bitter memory of paying top dollar for fake smiles. 23. A woman in the US famously turned her millions into a plastic surgery fund. She wanted to be unrecognizable. Mission accomplished. She spent so much on procedures that by the end, her friends literally didn't recognize her. Her face looked like it was downloaded from a different video game. The money vanished, her surgeries became medical horror stories, and her only lasting fame was being mocked on tabloids for resembling a wax statue left out in the sun. Millions of dollars, all for the privilege of being a human before and after cautionary tale. 24. A Canadian jackpot winner decided his life's dream was to buy a professional wrestling company, not the WWE. Oh no, he bought a third-rate local circuit with 5 wrestlers and a ring that looked like it was borrowed from a high school gym. He poured millions into promoting shows that nobody attended, booking pyrotechnics that barely worked, and paying guys to hit each other with folding chairs in front of 12 confused spectators. By the end, he had less of a wrestling empire and more of a very expensive hobby. Imagine blowing millions just to LARP as Vince McMahon in your backyard. 25. Some people dream of travel. This lottery winner's idea of travel was chartering private jets to go shopping. Not shopping in Paris, not Milan, shopping at outlet malls in the next state over. He'd literally burn through tens of thousands of dollars on fuel just to buy discount sneakers and bulk packs of socks. Nothing screams financial genius like spending a fortune to buy things that save you $20. His accountant tried to intervene, but how do you reason with a man who thinks Costco is worth a Gulf Stream? Eventually, the jets were repossessed, and he went back to Walmart like the rest of us. 26. A man in Alabama proved that poor financial planning knows no limits. He decided to keep his winnings a secret. Smart move, right? Except he couldn't resist buying a dozen cars, a huge boat, and a house shaped like a pyramid. People noticed. His attempt at subtlety lasted about as long as a TikTok trend. The IRS noticed, too. He hadn't bothered to pay taxes on any of it. Within a few years, his secret fortune turned into a very public auction of everything he owned. Pro tip: if you want to stay low profile, maybe don't build an ancient Egyptian monument in your backyard. 27. Another genius decided his millions were best spent chasing aliens. He poured money into research, which basically meant buying night vision goggles, camping in the desert, and funding local UFO enthusiasts. Years later, the only thing he found was dehydration, sunburn, and a stack of unpaid bills. No alien motherships, no cosmic wisdom, just a grown man squinting at stars while his fortune evaporated. By the time the government released real UFO footage, he was too broke to even afford cable to watch it. The only thing abducted in his life was his bank account. 28. One couple blew their winnings building a dream garden. Except by garden, they meant acres of fountains, statues, imported palm trees, and a koi pond bigger than most swimming pools. It looked like the set of a bad fantasy movie. Maintenance alone cost thousands a week, and half the plants died because, shocker, they lived in a climate that couldn't sustain them. By the end, their so-called Eden was just a wilted jungle of debt. They could have had a cozy retirement, but instead, they basically cosplayed as failed Roman emperors. All that was missing was a fiddle and some flames. 29. A man in Ohio thought he could outsmart Vegas with his winnings. He hit the casinos with the confidence of a financial Einstein, convinced he'd double his millions in no time. Spoiler, the house always wins. He lost everything, sometimes in single nights, chasing the same fantasy that Vegas has been selling since the dawn of neon lights. By the end, the only jackpot he hit was a permanent seat at the What Happened to Your Money anonymous support group. It's almost poetic. The lottery gave him millions, and he gave them straight back to the gambling industry. Circle of life. 30. Another lucky winner decided to dabble in politics. With zero experience, he thought throwing money at a mayoral race would guarantee victory. He funded ridiculous campaign ads, bought billboards with his face photoshopped onto Mount Rushmore, and threw rallies that mostly attracted free hot dog enthusiasts. He lost in a landslide, millions gone, no office, just the eternal humiliation of knowing his campaign slogan, "Vote rich, get rich," became a meme. He didn't become a leader, he became a punchline. Democracy is safe, but his bank account isn't. 31. A woman in Australia bought herself a private plane even though she didn't know how to fly. She thought it would be a good investment. Turns out, planes don't hold value like baseball cards. The upkeep bled her dry, and eventually she sold it at a massive loss. The cherry on top? She never even hired a pilot. The closest she got to flying was using it as an Instagram backdrop. Congratulations, you didn't buy an airplane. You bought the world's most expensive lawn ornament. 32. One winner's bright idea was to start a perfume line, based entirely on himself. Yes, his scent. He spent millions bottling cologne designed to smell like his personal essence, which, judging by reviews, was somewhere between burnt toast and desperation. Unsurprisingly, customers weren't interested in Ode to Lottery Loser. The business tanked, warehouses full of unwanted bottles piled up, and his millions vanished into thin air. Literally. If nothing else, at least he proved money can't buy taste. Or deodorant. 33. Another genius went for the ultimate flex. He bought a gold-plated toilet. Because when you've got millions, obviously the first thing you want is your digestive process to sparkle. The toilet cost hundreds of thousands and was installed with great fanfare. Within a year, he was broke, and the toilet was repossessed. Imagine the indignity of watching men with gloves wheel your golden throne out the front door while you're back to using porcelain like the rest of us. The fortune may be gone, but at least his legacy flushes with style. 34. And finally, one man thought the secret to happiness was a camel. Yes, he imported exotic animals to live on his property, including a camel, because apparently winning millions wasn't enough. He wanted to roleplay as Lawrence of Arabia in suburban America. The upkeep was astronomical, neighbors complained, and the camel itself was notoriously unfriendly. Within a couple years, the animals were gone, his money was gone, and all that remained was a chewed-up fence, and a story so stupid even Disney wouldn't adapt it. Millions lost, all because someone confused financial freedom with running a petting zoo on steroids. 35. A man in Texas won millions and immediately started a high-tech startup. His big idea? Selling bottled smart water infused with positive affirmations. Yes, he paid engineers to whisper compliments at jugs of water, then slapped $20 price tags on them. Customers quickly realized it was just tap water with delusions of grandeur. He lost millions, investors laughed him out of the room, and his legacy is basically being the guy who tried to out-stupid Gatorade. Somewhere, Gwyneth Paltrow is furious she didn't think of it first. 36. A British winner thought he'd reinvent nightlife by opening a club that only played his personal favorite genre, polka. He dumped cash into neon lights, a sound system, and a dance floor designed for accordion solos. Shockingly, no one wanted to party to oompa beats at 2 a.m. He kept the club going for a year, pouring millions into what was essentially the world's most expensive wedding reception for nobody. By the end, the only people dancing were repo men unplugging his speakers. 37. One Florida winner decided the secret to happiness was buying a tank. Not a fancy car, not a yacht, an actual decommissioned military tank. He drove it around town until the police kindly explained that suburban traffic laws don't cover armored vehicles. Maintaining it drained his winnings, and eventually the tank was seized. Imagine losing millions just to cosplay as a dictator at rush hour. The only war he won was against his own checking account. 38. A couple in the US spent their winnings building a replica of Stonehenge in their backyard, full-size too. They thought it would become a tourist attraction, but it ended up as a giant pile of rocks nobody cared about. Locals mocked it as Stonehenge, and upkeep became ridiculous. Their millions disappeared faster than you can say New Age bankruptcy. The Druids didn't predict this kind of stupidity, but they probably would have laughed. 39. One winner funded his lifelong dream of becoming a magician. Not a good magician, mind you, just a guy with money and props. He spent millions on costumes, assistants, and even a live tiger for his act. Unfortunately, his illusions were about as convincing as a toddler hiding behind a curtain. Shows bombed, audiences left confused, and eventually even the tiger wanted out. Millions gone, reputation shredded, and the only trick he pulled off was making his fortune disappear. 40. A woman in Canada won millions and decided to buy a fleet of taxis to corner the market. Her plan was brilliant if it had been 1952. But in the age of Uber and Lyft, her taxis sat idle, drivers quit, and maintenance bills exploded. Within a few years, she was broke, and her taxis were sold for scrap. Turns out, being a millionaire doesn't protect you from technological progress. It just means you can go bankrupt in style. 41. A man in Louisiana bought an entire ghost town with his winnings, convinced he'd turn it into a tourist hotspot. Instead, he discovered that abandoned towns are abandoned for a reason. No plumbing, no electricity, and a creepy atmosphere that made even horror movie producers say, too much. He wasted millions fixing nothing and eventually left, broke, and haunted by both ghosts and creditors. Congratulations, you just reinvented the concept of squatting, but way more expensive. 42. Then we have the guy who bought a private jet but couldn't afford to keep it at an airport. So he parked it in his backyard. His HOA was not amused. Fines piled up, maintenance was impossible, and the jet became a rusting lawn ornament. Eventually, it was cut up for scrap metal, and his millions were gone. Imagine blowing your fortune just to give your neighbors a daily reminder that you peaked early. 43. A winner in Europe decided his new passion was medieval jousting. He bought armor, horses, lances, and built an arena on his property. He even hired people to fight him. The problem? He wasn't good at it. After a few injuries and zero paying spectators, the project collapsed. His millions vanished, and all he had left was a pile of broken lances and a permanent limp. Turns out, lottery night isn't a real career path. It's just a very stupid midlife crisis. 44. A man in Australia turned his winnings into a project he called the Ultimate Barbecue. He spent millions building the biggest grill in the Southern Hemisphere, so big it required construction cranes to assemble. It cooked about 4 steaks at a time. The project bankrupted him, and the grill now sits abandoned, a rusting monument to waste. Imagine explaining to your grandkids that you lost millions chasing the dream of being king of cookouts. Spoiler, you don't get a crown for overcooked sausages. 45. One woman decided to hire her own entourage. Yes, like a celebrity. She paid people thousands per week just to follow her around, laugh at her jokes, and pretend she was famous. For a while, she lived in a bubble of fake adoration. But when the money ran out, so did her friends. She ended up broke and alone, which is what happens when you confuse loyalty with payroll. Her autobiography could be titled Lonely at the Bottom. 46. Another winner blew his millions funding his dream invention, a refrigerator that texts you when it's empty. Groundbreaking, right? Except fridges already exist that do that. He patented nothing, built prototypes that barely worked, and sank all his cash into a product nobody wanted. Investors laughed, consumers ignored it, and he ended up broke. Imagine wasting millions reinventing the fridge, and all you get is a sad reminder that common sense isn't for sale. 47. One genius thought he'd finally achieve immortality. He spent millions funding shady anti-aging clinics that promised to make him live forever. Spoiler, they didn't. They gave him overpriced vitamins, suspicious injections, and a bank account that aged faster than ever. By the time the scam collapsed, he was broke, still mortal, and looking older than ever. He didn't find eternal youth, just eternal embarrassment. 48. A man in California decided he'd invest in his brand by putting his face on billboards all over the city. No product, no service, just his face and the caption, "This is what success looks like." It cost millions, confused everyone, and got him exactly 0 opportunities. Within 2 years, he was broke, and the billboards were gone. Success doesn't look like him anymore. It looks like a cautionary tale with an overdue rent bill. 49. Then there's the winner who bought a fleet of luxury yachts despite living in the middle of Kansas. He thought it was a smart investment. Instead, he spent millions on boats that never touched water. Locals called it the Land Navy, and within years, they were sold for a fraction of the cost. He could have bought a swimming pool, but no. He went with dry dock Titanic cosplay. Brilliant. 50. And now, the runner-up for dumbest move, a man who blew his fortune on a space tourism ticket. He paid millions for a seat on a rocket that never launched. The company went bankrupt, his money vanished, and the closest he got to space was watching Star Wars on Blu-ray. He didn't travel to the stars, he traveled straight into debt. 51. Finally, the crown jewel of stupidity. The man who won millions and buried the cash in his backyard for safekeeping. He didn't tell anyone, didn't mark the spot, and, predictably, forgot where it was. Years later, he was broke, still digging holes in his yard like a deranged raccoon, and the money was gone. Whether it rotted, got stolen, or was swallowed by the earth, no one knows. But one thing's clear, he literally turned millions into dirt. And if that isn't the perfect mic drop for human stupidity, I don't know what is. And there you have it. An Olympic highlight reel of people proving that money doesn't buy brains. It just rents stupidity at scale. So tell me, which disaster deserves the gold medal for dumbest meltdown? Drop your votes in the comments, toss me your own favorite tales of financial carnage, and if you actually enjoyed watching humanity set cash on fire, hit like, subscribe, and brace yourself. Because yes, it gets even dumber.